You smell that? It smells like a brand new Anbernic with a hint of XX. Right here, hot off the truck, we do have the new RG34xxSP, Anbernic's new clamshell device. What's going on today, Internet? Selfish here with Retrospect. We're going to do a first look video here on the RG34xxSP today and find out what it's all about. Let's take a look. Alright, so we're going to do a quick unboxing here. I just cut the tape off this so I didn't have to do it on camera, but there was a couple pieces of tape here. This is probably the most beat up box I think I've ever gotten from Anbernic. They did ship them differently, which might have something to do with the tariffs. I'm not really sure. We're going to open her up here real quick. Wow, it's still hard to open even after cutting the tape. And let's see, we got the handheld here. We'll move that off to the side. I'm guessing in here we do have an A to C cable. We're going to find out here real quick, but I'm pretty sure that's what it's going to be. I've never opened one of these boxes without ripping it either. It's crazy. We do have a Type A to Type C cable in here, so just as was suspected, we don't need that right now, but we'll go through the rest of what's in here. We do have some screen wipies, yeah, and a screen cover. This is a nice screen cover in comparison to what we've seen on a lot of devices lately. And then on top of that, we have an origami accordion. This is going to give you some basic usage and advice. If you've never used one of these before, this might be helpful to you. If you have used them before, you already probably know everything that's in this manual. Let's get this stuff out of the way and grab this handheld out. Get out of there! Alright, and we have the brand new 34xxSP. And I have mine in the GameCube colorway or indigo. Depending on where you look for it, it will give you one answer or the other. So we're going to do what we normally do, and we are going to go through the I/O here real quick, right off the top, kind of get that out of the way, and also so we know where everything is as we're going through here. Now on the top here, we do have our shoulder buttons and our triggers. They feel good. They actually feel like the original SP on the outside here anyways. That weird, like, that little sloppiness that they had on them. We also do have an OTG USB-C port, and we do have HDMI out. Looks awfully familiar to the 35xxSP. Weird. On the back here, we do have some ridges, similar to what we had on the Miyoo Flip. And that's about it. On the right hand side over here, we do have our power and reset switches, as well as a TF hole for TF2 for your game slot. On the left hand side over here, we do have volume up and down, and then TF1, or your OS hole, or your OS hole right here on the left hand side. On the bottom or the front, depending on how you're holding it, we do have a single 3.5 headphone hole. Inside here, we do have a 3.4-inch IPS display. That's a 720 by 480, so it's a 3.2 display that's on here. We do have our menu button and start and select. They're very flat and a little clicky, but not nearly as bad as some of their other devices, so actually pretty good there. We do have our face buttons, much less clicky than what was on the 35xxSP. Let's take a look here. We do have a decent amount of travel. Of course, I have to hold it in the right spot to do that. We have a decent little bit of travel, not much, and it springs back very, very quickly, so it's got definitely a good reload speed there. As far as our D-pad goes, we have a decent D-pad in here. It's a little flat to the device, but you wouldn't expect anything less on a clamshell type device. Looks to be a little bit thicker of a D-pad than what was on the Miyoo Flip. It's got a decent central pivot as well, so I think it's going to be just fine. And then we have a couple of sticks, and these do have R3 and L3. They do not have a lot of travel at all. They're pretty shallow in here. They have these weird rubber tops on them. Hopefully those don't either get dirty or just kind of lose their grippiness. For right now, they're plenty grippy, so I don't see us ever having any issues with that. I'm sure they probably still have Anbernic's traditional cardinal snapping since that's built into the software, but they seem like they're just fine. And obviously we have the flip. We also do have a couple lights on this corner over here. Those are going to be to tell you your indicators for power and stuff like that, but nothing too crazy. While we boot this up, we're going to go through the specs real quick. As I said before, this does have a 3.4-inch IPS display at 720 by 480. It is a 3:2 aspect ratio. It is running Linux. It's actually running Anbernic's own operating system. They have their own OS they've been building over the years. Probably one of the better stock operating systems out there as far as Linux devices goes. Inside here, for all the power, we do have an H700. Same CPU we saw in, I think, 8 devices last year from Anbernic. And it is rocking a Mali G31 MP2 GPU. Now, the difference between this one and the devices that came out last year, like the 35XX that has the same CPU, this one has more RAM. This is running on 2 gigs of RAM versus the 1 gig of RAM that all the devices are running on last year. You're going to say, how does that make a difference? It doesn't really, but we'll get into where you might see some improvement. Storage on here, this does have a 64 gigabyte card in it that does have games and applications on it. It does have 2.4 and 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi as well as Bluetooth 4.2, so you can actually use this as a gaming setup where you would use this as your console. You can plug it in and then use Bluetooth controllers. So off the HDMI on here to your TV or to a monitor would be really beneficial for something like that. As I stated before, we do have that 3.5 hole right there. We also do have a single speaker right here on the center of the device. Now, as I stated, this does have Anbernics operating system in it. Looks just like pretty much all their other devices they have out that have the H700 chipset. I have a theory that the only reason, because they were supposed to change CPUs for this launch, I have a theory that the only reason why they didn't change CPUs is because they couldn't figure out how to get their operating system onto another CPU in time for launch. I believe it's 8 devices Anbernics still slated to release this year, and this is the second device that they've released. We're almost 6 months into the year. Not to say they can't release a new device every week. We've seen them do that before. But I think they went over enough of a beating over the years for not having a good firmware on it that now they have a good firmware. They don't want to give it up. So I think they're holding off to change out the CPUs until they can figure out their firmware on another CPU. In here, we're going to have all kinds of things, but it's pretty much typical on all of these devices. You do have this app center. We'll start here. I know we should start a game, so we'll just start in here real quick. We have Willy Willy, and it's kind of like their version, I guess, of YouTube, where you can watch videos and stuff. You also do have a video player, and I'm just going to guess that this probably has a video in it about this device. They always send the marketing video already on the device, for the device you're using. Oh, isn't that pretty? That's enough of that. On top of that, you do have an ebook reader, as well as a PDF reader. So if you're like me and you like to load your comics onto these devices, you could actually use either one depending on what format your comics are in. So this actually gives us a little bit more expandability than the non-Anbernic devices. Usually they have one or the other. You have a file manager. It's going to be like the Dingus file manager where you can see all your files. You do have a music player, which is really nice, especially on these devices that are really well unpocketable. That's going to be very beneficial. And it's nice that they put the headphone jack right here by itself on the bottom. That way, if you just put it in your pocket, you could literally just have your headphone cable coming out and use this as an MP3 player. So I think that's pretty awesome. Outside of that, we do have our game room and our RA games. Your game room is going to be your standalone emulators for the devices. You likely won't need to go in here. PSP and above, you might want to come in here and take a look, but anything under PSP, you're not going to have any use for being inside of here. RA games is going to be your complete library. I'm noticing now these aren't in alphabetical order, I don't think. Okay, so we have, well, let's find out. We started A. Oh, yeah, they're in alphabetical. Why are those other ones? Yeah, PlayStation and PSP are out of order, but everything else is kind of in the right spot. Yeah, the ports is in the wrong spot, too. I don't know what's going on with the order on here. It doesn't matter, though. So we have everything, but you do have your Dreamcast, your N64, PlayStation, and PSP. This will be a difficult handheld to play 16:9 games, just based off the size of the screen, which we did just find out the screen's actually probably bigger. It's actually buried underneath this huge forehead here on the top, but they wanted to keep a 3:2 aspect ratio to keep it picture perfect for GBA, and so they added a forehead and cut some of the screen out. Now, this isn't going to be like the Retroid situation where the screen got cut out. As far as we can tell, all the math works out right. They've been doing that since the RG34xx non-SP version, and we haven't had anybody complaining about being able to put filters or anything like that on there. So it seems like it's doing just fine right here. It's more or less they created a bigger bezel, and that's why you have such a big forehead right here. Now, you do have 5 stoppers to help with closing. Also, there is a magnet strip in the top of here, which helps with it holding shut. When it's closed, it's not opening and bouncing around so much. You will see that on some of these other handhelds, but this one here does not open up so much like the other ones do. They call it a Hall effect magnet. I think that people, anytime they use magnets now, just say Hall effect. I don't know if I believe and don't believe what's Hall effect anymore, but on their website, Anbernic does call it a Hall effect magnet for whatever reason. Outside of that, there's not a lot to talk about. It's got good build quality. The hinge feels really good on here. It's actually pretty impressive. I don't feel like it's going to break. I do kind of miss the sound, though, of the Miyoo. That feeling that it's going to break every time you open it, it just adds a little bit of excitement to owning the device. You're really losing that here. It doesn't have it. In fact, I feel like it's the exact same opening mechanism as a 34xxSP, just on a smaller device. We already know that one works out pretty well. Some things I can already tell you that I'm not going to like about this, though. So we have one angle here. I tend to like to play these flat like they're a vertical handheld, just any of these flips, and this one here is not going to hold. I mean, literally, yeah, it's bouncing up on its own. So it's never going to hold in a flat position, unfortunately. And actually, to be honest with you, this one leans back, so it actually isn't flat anyways. It's going the other direction, but it doesn't take any amount of effort or movement for that to come popping back up, which is a little too bad. But, you know, this is a good angle like this anyways. This is going to be the same angle that the original GBA SP is, so they copied that angle. This is one of the locking points on that, so I guess it makes sense, but it would have been nice to have had the ability to make it go straight, like right about there. But nope, we got to go too far, and then it bounces back. Now, since this is a first look video and I just want to keep it kind of short and sweet and just do a kind of an overview, which is what we're doing here, I am going to play a couple games and then I'm going to follow up with you on the back end before I get into my real thick testing here going forward. So let's do that quick. We're gonna get some retro nostalgia from this. We're gonna start off here with Aladdin on the Super Nintendo or Super Famicom, depending on what part of the world you're from. This looks really good on here. As you can see, they do add the borders on here for you so that you are going to be at the correct aspect ratio. So all that's already, I'm not paying enough attention, but all that is already built in here for you. You don't need to do any of that as it goes. And it looks like it's almost a CRT filter because you see the bubble around it too. Yeah, it plays pretty well. I got no complaints. I'll just work with joysticks. Oh, cool. I mean, not that I need them for this game, but... We're not playing GBA, just with the settings the way they are. Little army man. It was an ambush. What happened? I'm not sure why you'd want to play Sega Saturn on here because it just isn't going to have enough power. But if it is something you want to try out, there's probably some games out there that work that I just haven't come across yet. But this is going to perform like any other H700, so you really just, that extra gig of RAM isn't giving it the oomph for Saturn. But what I did find is that the keys aren't mapped for Saturn, so you're going to actually have to go here and go over to your settings, go down to RetroArch, and actually map your keys. It's going to seem weird because Saturn's running on an emulator, right, in the core and everything else, but for some reason you have to map it through RetroArch. There isn't like the actual emulator on here. But you can go in here, and if you load the core for it, go down here for Sega Saturn, which is apparently nowhere near the top. Saturn, looks like we're using the Yaba Sanshiro core, so we'll go over there. And then what you're going to want to do is go to settings, and you're going to want to go to your input. So you have retro pad bindings, you're going to hit OK. Port 1, which is this, would be port 1. And then you have to go through and actually map all the keys. It looks like they're mapped. I don't know what they're mapped for. It looks like actually for a keyboard, but they don't work. Once you have them mapped, you can play, and I use that term loosely, Sega Saturn games. And I'll show you one here real quick. It's not going to be, I would say, the best user experience. We should get a FPS counter up here for this, which is going to be really hard to see on this screen. I put on frame skip. Whoops. All right, let's try this with an FPS counter on. We'll see what happens. So I guess it seems to be holding up now. I had run a game while I was trying to figure out how to set up the controls, and it was not, right after I got the control set up, it was not going very well. We were rocking at about 40 FPS on the 60 FPS game, so it was definitely lacking a bit. I don't know how to get rid of this thing once you pick it up. I mean, other than when we get to here. I've never actually played this game before, but it's already on here, so they had it preloaded. Okay, I don't know what made this work so much better, but I am not upset about it. This is pretty awesome, actually, that it's working. So I guess maybe you can get away with some Saturn games. Like I said, when I tried to set this up, just to get the controller set up so we go in and I could show you, this was running at 40 FPS. Now, I did have to restart the device in between, so maybe there was something stuck in the cache and it needed to get reset. Very good possibility. If that's all you have to do, then by all means, let's play some Saturn games. We'll try another one just in case. I have no idea what this game is, but we're going to give it a shot. This is also preloaded on there. Now, it looks like this game already has a frame skip built in. As you watch, it has a skip of 1 or 2, which seems really weird for a shmup. I don't know why this would have frame skip on, but it does. But you know what? We're able to hold consistent frame rates, so I guess boo fucking who. I haven't played a shmup in a long time. Obviously, this is not going well. Alright, well, I stand corrected. Sega Saturn seems to be doing pretty well, actually. It must have just been the first run there, but after I did the reboot and came back in, everything looks to be working just fine. So I guess maybe it is something that you could try out. Let me know down in the comments if you get one of these and you get Sega Saturn to work really well. There's not a lot of Saturn games that I played. There's about 6 or so. None of the 4 that are on here are games I played before. So maybe it'll work out just fine. We'll try out a Dreamcast and N64 game real quick before we button it up. I forgot Bomberman has like a 15-minute intro, maybe 20. I don't know, it took a long time. And just to get down here and just see if it works. But it does seem to be working pretty good. No real complaints. Let's get an FPS counter up here, shall we? There we go. Let's take a look here. Yeah, looks like everything's holding pretty well. Now, this game isn't super intense, but most of the games that are on here preloaded are kind of puzzle games like this, so I wasn't exactly sure which way to go with it. But yeah, it seems to work good. They do have a really good overlay here on the Nintendo 64 too, obviously to help out with your resolution, get everything perfect, but it looks really nice on here. I don't really have any complaints. It does kind of suck, though, that it does shrink your screen size on all these because it is a 3:2 aspect ratio, but it could be a lot worse. It's just, some of these games get a little tiny if you're not really that close to them. Now, this is like a handheld you're going to hold closer to you anyways, so I don't know how big of a deal that is. Crazy Taxi is usually a layup on these devices that's going to be there. This one does not have Crazy Taxi. We are going to try out a Dreamcast game here real quick, and then I'll go through my thoughts as far as this goes. But we're going to play this game just because it kind of needs a little bit of precision. So here you have that overlay here on the sides again here. Looks good, though. Ah! Got past me. Kicking my own ass. It's really responsive. These sticks are actually very responsive. Pretty bold that they put God of War on here. If you don't mind playing something like God of War with frame skip and everything else on, this will be fine. You know, there's a million settings in PPSSPP, the emulator for PlayStation, that really can make this game work on anything almost now. I mean, you still have to have some power, but the reason why it's in the green is because it's doing frame skip, so we're a fraction of the frame. But it doesn't feel unplayable, and it's not really hiccuping, which is weird, because usually when you get this much frame skip and stuff in here, you'll start to see a bunch of hiccups, but we're not seeing those here, so they optimized it right. They made it work. Alright, so what do I think about this thing? I hate to admit that I like it actually maybe more than the Miyoo. I'm not sure. I miss this hinge. The noises and the feeling that the hinge has, you just don't have that satisfaction here. Sure, you can open and close it, but it's not like a fidget spinner like the hinge is. I guess a fidget toy, not a spinner. If it's spinning, then it's probably broken. And I know a lot of people have had problems with the hinge on the Miyoo. Now, let's not forget that we did have issues with the hinge initially also on the RG35xxSP. So they've had some time to perfect this. I'm kind of curious if there's any fish paper in here, but maybe we'll pull that apart for the next video. I would like to try it some more. There's a lot that really to like here. I thought I was going to be upset about this forehead on here because everybody's been talking about the forehead, and it is big. And then we were told that there's magnets in there, which makes sense to hold it closed. And then now we know there's also some additional screen in there. So that doesn't really change the dynamics for me anyways. I know it does for some people. I don't need that screen up there. I'm probably only going to mostly play GBA on here. I probably won't use it for much else. And as long as that's kind of where your head's at, I think it's great. The other systems, though, do look really good. It's got a clear, crisp screen. It's just you're going to have to play with those bezels that are going to be added to your games. It's just a matter of how you feel about having those where you're going to have the bezels to make it the right aspect ratio or not. Or you can just stretch it. You know, this is a pretty small screen. If you stretch it, you're not going to see it on most games anyways. It's not going to matter. Just throwing it out there. But I'd say overall, it's really nice. These buttons up here, these outside ones, the L1 and R1, feel exactly like they do on an original Game Boy Advance SP. These buttons didn't exist in the middle, so I couldn't tell you anything about those. But these here, they have that same, like, I don't know how to explain it. They stick out and everything exactly the same and have that same feel to them as they do. Look at the wobble and everything that they did on the original SP. I think that's pretty awesome. They did a really good job there, making those work the same way. But overall, I think it's a good experience. I'll need to play with it some more just to know for sure. I don't understand why they put sticks on this, other than the fact that they were obviously trying to copy another device that's out there. That's the other thing. Okay, so I have a hinge spot here and here, or on the SP, you only get it one spot, which is kind of crazy to me. So this doesn't exist though, so it won't lock in there. I mean, you can put it there. Here it's locked in. Doesn't matter. Here it's not. But yeah, I think they obviously copied it. If you look at it, it's just a spitting image. They did do some things differently though. So like I said, your L1 and R1 buttons on here are definitely closer to the original SP on the Anbernic versus the Miyoo. And the Miyoo doesn't have any travel on those. These have a little bit longer travel distance, stuff like that. So there's definitely some differences. But even these ridges are the same, and the speaker looks exactly the same. Like literally this front faceplate could swap off one to the other. But we'll do a more of a comparison here in a follow-up video once I get some more hands-on time, because I've had a ton of time with the Miyoo. I need some more hands-on time with this just to get a better feel for it. Also make sure the hinge doesn't break. I mean, this is day one. I've opened and closed that hinge thousands of times on the Miyoo, never had a problem. Now I know a lot of people do, so I'm not trying to be insensitive. I just haven't had any issues with mine. but I'm sure I'll do the same thing here. I did it on the 35xxSP too. If I have a device that it can open and close, I'm just going to sit here and open and close it. Especially if I'm like bored, catch myself like on the computer, but I have a handheld near or in my hands, and I will just start messing around with it and kind of see what it's all about. I was surprised by the Saturn gameplay. I didn't expect anything to work, especially after I went into it the first time and nothing did work. But once I got the controls working, it worked out just fine. So I guess I still wouldn't expect it to get Saturn gameplay, but it does. At least it appears to. So maybe try some Saturn games that you know and know how they're supposed to play. I don't know much about that catalog. One last thing I do want to bring up here is over the course of my filming, which was about 2 hours for this video, I had to reset this 4 or 5 times because it got stuck. Now, it almost always got stuck trying to get out of an application, so I'd finish a game, and when I went to exit, it just wouldn't ever get past that screen after it says goodbye, or whatever exit, I can't remember what it says, but it says something on it, goes to the black screen, and then you're usually on the desktop, and it would just get stuck there, and so you never got back to the desktop. So I haven't had that on another device in a long time. It's a little concerning. We also know that nobody expects this firmware to be what you're going to use on here in the long run. We're going to see custom firmware for this popping up any day now. We'll have all kinds of options. I'm going to guess we're going to see some newly, anything that supported the H700 should get a lot of those same options here. I don't see why you wouldn't. In fact, I haven't tried it, but the 35XX stuff might work on here. Only problem is going to be your screen. But I think we're going to leave it right there because it is a first look video and I don't want to make it a million hours long because I really do want to dig deep into this and check it out even more. But I'd say at my initial impressions, it feels really good, feels good in the hands. I think the buttons and everything feel really good. I'm actually impressed by these joysticks, even though all they are is nubs. They're literally nothing else. They're about, just barely bigger than a chocolate chip, but they work out pretty well. And the device feels really good in your hands. It's pretty impressive. I actually like the feel of this more than the 35XX. I don't know why they put sticks on here though. You'd get rid of those sticks. They should have made the 35xxSP P or something with sticks on it. This already has the room on it. They're not needed. They weren't needed on the Miyoo either, but that's all I got for you today. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, share this video with your friends because sharing is caring. It also helps grow the channel. Also, leave me some little messages down there. I love replying to you guys. And if you leave something, there's about a 90% chance I'm going to reply to you. So let me know how much I suck. Great, right? Once you're done with all that, there's a couple videos up here on the screen that YouTube picked for you. I don't argue with YouTube ever. If it tells me to watch something, I watch it. And I recommend you do the same. But that's all I got for you today. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.